Our gospel today, we have revealed to us and shown to us just how Jesus made this call to Simon Peter. And it's both a simple thing and a dramatic thing, but I think it's very, very important that we pay close attention to, of course, both Peter, whom we can probably relate to rather well, but even more importantly, to pay attention to Jesus and his response to Peter. So here's Peter. We know that he was a man with this type of labor, this fisherman, and along comes Jesus, and he really interrupts Peter's life. He interrupts what was going on. Peter had his plan, he had his mission, he had his life in order, and along comes Jesus in this somewhat dramatic way, and makes this invitation and invites him to come follow him. Peter, though, knowing himself, and knowing himself quite well, replies, of course, to this presence of Jesus, this presence clearly of somebody at least of holiness. He didn't quite understand yet at this moment that this was literally God walking the earth. But he says to him, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man." Now, at face value, that does seem like a rather polite and probably, we might even say, a holy response. He's very humble. He knows that he is a sinful man, that he is chosen poorly in life, that through his actions he's distanced himself from God. And so he says, stay away from me. I'm not worthy to have you even in my presence. And I think there's a lot of us who kind of say, wow, isn't that a very holy response? Isn't that a very, he respects what's there and recognizes he's not worthy. He's not lived a life to have somebody that holy be near him. But this is where it's really important to pay attention to exactly what Jesus says to him. His first words, after Peter says this, his first words are, "Do not be afraid." Afraid of what? Now, we could say that maybe Peter was a bit startled at the miracle that had just occurred of the fish. But at least when I'm reading that doesn't quite strike me as what Jesus is speaking to. I don't think he's just initially saying, hey, don't be afraid of the fact that you had a really good day out fishing. As a matter of fact, I think most Minnesotans would love to have a day out fishing like that and would not be afraid of catching a lot of fish. As a matter of fact, they'd be bragging about having that many fish. So I don't think that Jesus was saying, do not be afraid, to his startle at the fish. So what was he saying, do not be afraid? Well, what's the only other thing that Peter said? Depart from me, for I am a sinful man. In a certain sense, I think Jesus, not in a certain sense, in actuality, I believe that Jesus was speaking to Peter in that moment and saying to him, you do not need to be afraid of me being with you. He's speaking directly to Peter's recognition of his own sinfulness, of Peter falling into that lie of thinking that because he's a sinner, that God will now be distant from him and ought to be distant from him. And so he speaks right into it saying, don't be afraid of that. You can almost hear him say, because I'm not afraid. Do not be afraid about me coming into your life in this most intimate and very direct way. Now, we who know the rest of the story know the why. Because no matter how bad and how awful a person's sins are, the mercy and the love of Jesus Christ is stronger than any of it. And so then he continues, after he speaks those beautiful and powerful words, do not be afraid. Then he tells him what his mission is, that he will be catching men. And then his powerful response, with that fear dispelled, he left everything and followed him. So here for ourselves, I think, is also a very, very important lesson in how we ought to live in our relationship with Jesus Christ. Because the fact of the matter is, Jesus Christ loves you way too much to let you simply be a passive observer of his work. He takes way too much interest in you to simply allow you to be on the sidelines. No reference to the game going on right now. He loves you way too much to simply say, oh, you can just hang out near me. Rather, he's one who says, I love you so much that you, as you are, imperfect as you are, a sinner as you are, want you to be in with me. Now, we all have to wrestle with that same thing that Peter exposed in this moment. We know ourselves. We know that we sin. We know that there's sins that maybe we've struggled with for decades. And we're tempted to believe and listen to the lies of saying that sin is so bad, you need to fix those sins, then Jesus can make use of you. But rather, Jesus says, I got that. But we're tempted too to say, no, he can't work with me or through me. And kind of as a real indicator, did you hear the 3 penitential acts that we made? Can I borrow the Roman missile here for a second? So, I'll let you in on a little bit of insider baseball on how this works right here. So, at the beginning, very commonly, we either say the Confiteor, I confess to Almighty God and to you, my brethren. We either say that one, or we have the 3 strophes that the priest or the deacon will say. Now, there's different options of those 3 that the priest can say, but the most common one that you always hear, because it's actually right here in the front of the book, and the other 7 options are in the back, and we'd have to turn for them. So the most common one that you hear are the ones that I use tonight, which are, you were sent to heal the contrite of heart, Lord have mercy. All right, we'll make this participatory. Now, here's the one, though, that I want you to really pay attention to, this middle one. So the priest or the deacon is speaking to Jesus here. You came to call sinners. Not you came to call people who have perfected themselves. Not you have come to call those who have avoided sin. You came to call sinners. Isn't that exactly what Jesus just did with Peter in this gospel? But it didn't end with Peter. It continues to be the way, really, we start Mass so often and so regularly. Jesus loves each and every one of us so much that he wants to call us into his beautiful mission. And what is his mission, really? The salvation of the world. See, on this mission to share this love of Jesus Christ, this gospel, this good news, think about how neat this is. Because Jesus is God, right? So he's all powerful. He's omnipotent. He can do anything. Jesus could do all of the evangelizing of this world on his own. He's within his possibility. He could do that. Or if he wanted to, he has a myriad of angels that he could assign to each and every person on the planet throughout all the centuries and tell the angels, hey, would you go up here to the following people? Just sit down and do this. But he's not doing it himself. He didn't pick the angels, but in very, very specific circumstances. But the reality is, he's calling you. He's calling you. And there's nothing that you can put in front of his path that would stop him from making that call. The reality is you and I need but be like Peter and simply be willing to say yes. Now, of course, the lies begin and the worries begin to pop in. Well, I'm not good at this. I'm not good at that. How can I possibly accomplish whatever it is that the Lord has? Well, to steal a bit from Fulton Sheen, who I love to steal from him so much. I'll probably get sued by him at some point. But an analogy that he would use is a pencil. He said, when we look at a pencil and we think of a pencil, the pencil is an incredibly powerful tool. But it's only powerful insofar as it's willing to put itself at the disposal of the one who holds it. If I were to take this pencil and I wanted to write down a sentence or something like that, and the pencil simply said, "Oh, I refuse to, I'm not worthy enough, I can't do this," I would say to this pencil, "Oh," and I would set it aside for a different pencil. But when I pick up this pencil, do I expect this pencil to come up with the ideas that I want to write? Do I expect this pencil to know how to make my writing beautiful? No. The only thing I expect this pencil to do is be willing to be held in my hands. I'll worry about what it is to write. I'll worry about how it is to look. That's on me. I just need the pencil, in a certain sense, to say, yeah, I'll allow myself to be used in that way. You think of, for example, probably my favorite writing beyond the scriptures themselves would be probably the Divine Comedy. Dante Alighieri, back in 1300, picked up a pen and began writing the Divine Comedy. He didn't expect the pencil that he held to know it all. He did all that work. And because that pencil was docile to Dante, he composed one of the most beautiful writings that a mind could ever conceive. And so too with us. Being like that pencil, it's going to be the Lord. So I encourage you, if you are in this place where you're not sure and you're still trying to discern and you're trying to hear the call of God, whether that's into your vocation, your big V vocation, or even just on a daily basis, a lowercase v, not a K, I do know how to spell, a lowercase v, on what the Lord is asking you to do even on a daily basis. One of the things you can do, I'll recommend this to you in how part of my own discernment, even for the priesthood. I remember I was in college and I was very frustrated with what the Lord was asking of me. Not because he was asking me, but I was really struggling with discerning, Lord, are you calling me to the seminary? Now, there were other events ahead of time, but to keep it a little more brief, one of the things that I was encouraged to do was to each and every day, I went to the Newman Center up at North Dakota State, and I prayed there, but my prayer was not asking for a sign. It was not asking for that type of response from God on, Lord, what are you calling me to do? But I was encouraged, and I'm really appreciative of this encouragement. I simply went into my times of prayer and I said, okay, Lord, you know me better than I know myself. You know me even more intimately than I know me. So I'm going to put it on you. Lord, convince me. I'm not going to tell you, Lord, how. I'm not going to put those parameters, but convince me in a way that I will know. That became my daily prayer. And I can't say that it was a single moment or a specific incident on this day at this time. I knew that I needed to go to seminary. But over the span of about 4 months, it was much more like the sun rising in the morning, where when you get up real early and it's pitch black outside and you can't see anything. But then about 10 minutes later you look and all of a sudden it's now a little bit blue hue throughout everything and you can see a little bit further than you could 10 minutes ago. And then you go walking a little bit and you kind of look up from your path and you realize now it's gone from a blue to almost a red hue that's there. And you can see a little bit further. You can see a little bit more details of the trees that are out there. And then it goes from a red to a yellow. And then eventually it's full daylight. And you can see clearly how it is. In that same way, over the span of about 4 months, I knew I had to set aside not fishing, but engineering, or my pursuit of engineering at least. And I knew I had to go to the seminary. Yes, it was a hard thing to explain to my friends and my family that I was setting aside a career of, potentially earning 6 figures a year for one. I'm going to study philosophy, and I'm not sure if I can even get a job at McDonald's with that, but and to say, yep, I'm going to put all that on hold, and I'm going to go to the seminary and perhaps study to be a priest, where I'm going to have to work weekends and Super Bowl Sundays. But I knew with a conviction that the Lord was asking this of me, and I was able to do it then, with fear, with questions, but also with joy. And boy, the Lord did not disappoint. So I share that story for you as well, as an encouragement to be docile, to be open to what the Lord is asking. He's the creator. He's the genius behind it, but he wants to use us, just as he wanted to use Peter. This fisherman who had no skills to be a pope, and yet he asked him to be that. How was it possible? The Lord took care of it. And yes, Peter was a sinner, and yes, so are we. But that doesn't change the reality that he's calling each and every one of us. So let us be docile, like that pencil, and put ourselves in the hands of the one whose hands were pierced out of love for us. And when we live in that way, we get to see the gospel. We get to see the good work of God work not because of us, but through us. And that's where we'll be able to have the same joy that Peter did in being a true disciple of Jesus.